This is episode 735 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am pleased to be joined by Bronson Corn. He is a rancher here in New Mexico, specifically ranching in Chavez and Lincoln counties in the southeastern part of our state. Welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Bronson.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well, I appreciate your coming on. And I, so far, it sounds really good. I don't know where you're doing this from, but maybe the internet access in southeast New Mexico and some of those rural areas is a little better than we anticipated. So kudos on that.
Well, luckily, Starlink came out because the ranch I live on has no cell phone service, no landlines, no nothing. It's pretty off the grid whenever it comes to communication. So pretty
All
thankful.
right. Well, thank you, Elon. I guess he's now that he and Trump are kind of at odds. Maybe the political left will start to like him a little better. Maybe they'll give a statute of limitations. But Starlink, I've heard from many different people, is a very good technology, and so I'm glad that it's able to help us with this conversation today.
Yeah.
Before we get into some of the issues I want to discuss with you, uh, give us a little bit of detail about your ranch. I assume you're with cattle here. What kind of cattle? How many acres? Any other details you want to share about your business?
You bet. So I want to thank you again. My name is Bronson Corn. I'm also the president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers here in the state. But our family got here into New Mexico in 1870. They settled a fair amount of country here in the Roswell area. Right now, our family is operating, we'll just say, over 100,000 acres and operating more than 1,000 cows. We've traditionally been cow, calf, sheep, and goat operation. But due to some of the policies in the state of New Mexico, we actually had to get out of the sheep business. They made it to where we couldn't do any trapping or snaring on any federally allocated lands, and it killed us. It put us out of business, which is very unfortunate because our family, like I said, did have sheep since the 1870s right here in the Roswell area. Um,
Okay.
and I also have a background yard, which is a preconditioned yard for cattle. So I can get in a bunch of lightweight calves, get them started on feed, get them all their vaccinations, make sure they're good and healthy, and then they can go in any different direction. So I also own and operate a business called Vaca Flaca. It's the kind of the interesting name. Vaca Flaca means skinny
Yeah.
cow. So I get them in when they're skinny, and I hope to turn them out when they're fat. So,
All right. I can get the sense of humor there. That's great. All right. So that's a whole boatload of acreage. And I guess before we get into some of the more pertinent questions, uh, it sounds like you are working on a mix of federal and private land. Are you on state land as well? And can you talk about, just the challenges of dealing with different land, holders there in terms of uh, federal and state particularly?
you bet. So yes, we do operate on state land as well. There's the key difference between state trust land and Bureau of Land Management (BLM) DOI land is on state trust land. It is essentially private property. The state of New Mexico, and actually all states, but state trust land is not. It's not public land. That is privately owned by those states. Those states are for profit for schools, many different initiatives that the state funds or the state land trust land funds go towards. So that being said, operating on state land versus BLM is quite a bit different. There's a lot more latitude to be able to manage things in a more healthy type environment for ranching. Whereas in the BLM, there's a lot of different obstacles that you have to go by, not just including the public being able to go out and do as they please, but we can, on state trust lands, all the improvements that are put in on state trust lands we own, whether that be fencing, whether that be water infrastructure, pipelines, fence lines. The land owner, the state land lease owner, owns those improvements. On the BLM, we don't own any of those improvements, which is good and bad on one respect. Where if we have infrastructure that is in dire need of getting replaced on the state land, we can get it done whenever we need to, as long as we stay in the original footprint of those projects. On BLM, on the other hand, it has to go through a very large group of people before you ever get a consensus on whether we can do those projects or not. Fortunately, the field staff that I have in the southeastern part of the state, they're very amenable to making sure that the infrastructure needed is both suitable for livestock and wildlife. And so I typically can get pipeline put in and water troughs and storage tanks at a decent clip. Not as much as I could if I just went out on my private property and did it, but they do help manage and maintain some of their infrastructure.
So I'll ask you a little bit of a policy question there. I at the Rio Grande Foundation, we have in the past uh, encouraged not necessarily the outright sale of BLM or Forest Service lands, but perhaps the devolution of those lands from the the federal government to the state government. It sounds to me like your experience reflects that of a lot of other people for whom the state is easier to deal with. Is that broadly accurate? Is that something that you've looked into, or any thoughts in terms of managing those lands and who does it better?
That's a If you'd asked me that question several years ago, the answer probably would have been considerably different. But right now, um, the state land commissioner is convinced that all state trust lands in the state of New Mexico are public land, and that is not the case. Like I said, so now we have a bunch of ground that we have paid for essentially to be able to get those state land permits. And it's the same way with BLM, but I'll step into that here in a minute. But on the state land, they are currently considering opening up some state land for public use. And what people don't understand, and it's partially is ignorance and not looking up exactly what state trust land is. But now there's starting to be an outcry to open up all public or all state land for public use. That's going to open up an entirely different door that we don't want to open ever. Due to the fact that if you look at the comparison between state trust lands and BLM ground, DOI, you can visibly see the detriment impact that certain areas have to public traffic. On state trust lands, that's not near the case because the only time it's opened up is for hunting seasons or if you get a recreational permit to be able to go out there, but you can't camp on state trust lands unless it's in a designated campsite. Whereas if we open up our state trust lands for public use, we are no longer going to have a viable, pristine, state owned piece of property. It's going to be just as trashed as a lot of the BLM ground is that gets very, very heavily used and abused by the public. And it puts a horrible perception on the rancher whenever people drive by and see trash and they see roads torn up and, well, shoot, we didn't do that. Um, and being able to go in and work on infrastructure versus on state land versus BLM is totally different as well. So it's going to open up a whole new can of worms if the state land office decides they want to try to open up state trust land for public use. Now on BLM, that ground, I've got some country out west of Roswell, and it's the only set of trees before you get to the Capitan Mountains. And you can go out there and find trash for days. And it's sad because the same people that are trying to push us off of the land because we're tearing up the land are the ones that are going out there actually tearing up the land. So that part makes it very difficult and challenging. And New Mexico and Arizona are very unique in the sense that on our BLM ground, we are water based states, whereas the rest of the United States that has any DOI land on it, those are land based states. And what the difference between those two are is on water based states, you have to own the water on your base property, meaning your private property, to be able to utilize the BLM ground that's next to it. Whereas in the rest of the country, all you have to have is private land that you can adjoin and run your livestock whenever you're not able to satisfy those BLM regulation needs. So it's very unique in the sense of how New Mexico is set up, and it's so checkerboard. I don't know if you look at a land status map, but the BLM ground, state land, and private, that's just all intermingled. And so it makes it a heck of a challenge for the ranchers in New Mexico in particular to be able to operate compared to what it does in many different states.
Yeah, wow, that's there's a lot to be said there, but uh, land management and this land commissioner, you know, um, she's obviously been there for a while, and she has her own unique perspectives on oil and gas and renewables, and how she's trying to really push the renewables very, very hard. But that's interesting. That's a new perspective to me. So thank you for that. Now, the reason I really wanted to have you on the show is because of some concerns that some ranchers and, quite frankly, we have with regard to uh, eminent domain in potentially being used to take land that's under the control of some ranchers in southeastern New Mexico in order to essentially run some new power lines through the area to kind of take that renewable energy that the land commissioner is so desirous of developing here in New Mexico. And it is all subsidized, and that's kind of our main concern. But just in general, any energy development has, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It impacts the landscape. There's resources that are put into play, et cetera. There's a lot of drawbacks to this so-called green power. But we're specifically going to talk about its impact on your ranch and ranchers like you in southeast New Mexico. So, talk about the specific project that we're talking about. What is the goal of the project, and how is it expected to impact you? And where's this whole thing going? So, I know that's a big question, but why don't we just talk about the parameters of the project and what it would impact you, how it would impact you, I guess.
You bet. So that project is called the Southwestern Connector Corridor Grid National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor. And it starts off all the way on the southeast side of the state, all the way on the very far southeast corner. It wraps back around a little bit towards Fort Bliss, and it takes off and it cuts the entire east side of the state, all the way halfway through Colorado. And what this project entails, it's a corridor. And so it's not just for transmission lines. They can put in through the Department of Energy's um, rule process that they put out through the Federal Register. It states that they can put any and all energy transmission or production in this corridor. And this corridor is 5 to 15 miles wide, and it can expand at their discretion up to 120 miles wide. So right now, if you just take the 5 mile wide at the narrowest point of what they're saying it's going to be, it's just under 2 million acres for the state of New Mexico alone for the use of eminent domain. And it affects everybody. It affects all landowners on the east side of the state that have any land right up next towards the border. Um, it's it is affecting them on a visceral level. And whenever I say that, I mean it to be true. As those landowners now, even though this is just a proposed rule, there's not even any, it's not, there has been no action taken on it yet. And the bankers that have the mortgages on those ranches, that have supplying those ranchers with lines of credit to operate on, they are already starting to cut back on the funding that they're giving to the ranchers, not to their fault at all, because they don't know how this project is going to affect the land value of the property that they have. If there's a 10-mile wide ranch that's 10 miles long and there's a 5-mile wide stretch that runs right straight through the middle of it, that can be, in the Department of Energy and the Federal Register states that they can take eminent domain upon all of that ground and can take possession, not just eminent domain to put in a project and turn it back. They can take possession of that ground. What's that going to do to those people that have been there for generations?
So I do want to follow up about that, but what is the goal of this project? As I understand it, to take there's a lot of these efforts underway to take wind power from the plains of southeast New Mexico and head to bigger cities. California is one likely destination. Phoenix is another. Uh, where are you hearing that this project is going with some of this power? And am I broadly in the ballpark in terms of what's going on?
Well, you're exactly right. It's going to Phoenix and it's going to California. All of the energy that's being produced in New Mexico, it's not staying in New Mexico. Whenever you hear of all of the good that the wind and solar is doing for electrifying the state of New Mexico, that is all baloney. None of it's staying here. And that's what the purpose of this corridor is. So whenever the Department of Energy was tasked in 2005 through an IIJA ruling that they need to electrify the United States. And that was in 2005. In 2021, the administration went in and did some large amendments to that 2005 IIJA law, and those amendments are what we are fighting now. That's the reason why this corridor is such a big issue. That's why the reason why this eminent domain is, it's the only vehicle that they've chosen to do, is to get the supposed power for that New Mexico is generating to tie into the grid lines that feed the United States. None of it's staying here.
Right. And but it is being subsidized by the taxpayers of New
Oh
Mexico
yeah,
because now Trump is fairly hostile to wind power. So uh, where do you see, will that impact things, do you think?
absolutely. And we don't have a definite answer yet to whether this administration is going to continue on with this project or not, because the Biden administration is the one that really ramped this thing up to be able to go in and do these projects. But I don't foresee the Trump administration pursuing it, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop fighting it. We did that once. We did that in December. We were fighting it, and then December comes around. It was December 16th, actually, and we got the notification that the Department of Energy had dropped the NITC corridor. That's what we call it, is NITC, NIETC. They had dropped the NITC corridor, and we were all excited. And come to find out, it was dropped in Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and Texas, but not in New Mexico. They had 10 different, at one time, there was 10 different NITC corridor plans projected for the United States. And I can't name them all off the top of my head. But right now there's 3 remaining. The other 7 have been defunded. They have been rescinded, but not in New Mexico, North Dakota, South Dakota, and then there's one in Michigan. Those are the 3 that are still alive that we're trying to get shut down. Just it, the way that I can relate it to people is, if you buy a house in town and your neighbor wants to use your hot tub, all he's got to do is tear down your fence and go into your backyard. It's the same thing that they're doing with the private property rights here in the state of New Mexico if this continues to go on, even through Colorado.
So let's understand this. So we're talking a 10-mile wide corridor to build high tension power lines, right? You know what those are, of course, as a listener, the big towers with several power lines on them. 10 miles seems pretty excessive, even just for the construction of that corridor, let alone you're saying that through eminent domain, they would keep that land and you would no longer have access to it as a rancher. Does that make any sense to you? I'm not familiar enough with the perspective impact that those high tension power cables could have on cattle and why you would want a 10-mile corridor, but maybe you've
That's
heard about it.
right, and that's the issue. Is it's 5 to 15 miles wide, and it can expand up to 120 miles. So it's basically anything between 5 and 120 miles, depending upon their discretion. The federal government is going to try to come in. Department of Energy through FERC are going to try to come in and do a blanket NEPA, National Environmental. Oh, my brain died out on me, but a NEPA assessment to ensure that the project is not going to adversely harm the local communities. That's basically what a NEPA is supposed to do. But they're going to do a blanket NEPA over everything. So they're saying that the same process, the same NEPA is going to cover a pipeline versus a transmission line versus a battery storage transmit or those substations. All of that is going to be covered. So once they do this blanket NEPA, they can put any infrastructure that they deem necessary for electric transmission or generating projects throughout this entire corridor with no communication with the landowner, no nothing. They can just go in and do it.
And is this still under the purview of the federal government right now? Where are we in the process here?
We are still under the purview of the Department of Energy. Secretary Wright has been very, very quiet, which is disturbing. Through we've held 7 different land or city hall type meetings from the southeast side of the state all the way to the northeast side of the state, and have invited the Department of Energy to every one of them. Have invited the Department of Energy to I can't tell you how many Zoom calls just to try to talk with them. They won't communicate with us at all. We went to took a team of our New Mexico cattle growers and some county commissioners all along the east side of the state, and we went to D.C. and we had meetings at the grid department, meetings at the Department of Energy, meetings with all of our congressional delegation, meetings with multiple different states delegation, which is amazing because it's kind of hard to get meetings with congressional delegations whenever you're not their constituents. And we had many people that were willing and trying to help us. The grid department are the ones that are tasked with actually implementing the projects through the Department of Energy. And the conversations that were had there were phenomenal. Joe Alexander did a great job of being very attentive. They have read all the letters, and people can still continue to send letters in, even though they shut down public comment. They said it's open ended for this project in particular, and they've received thousands and thousands of letters in opposition of this project. And he says they've read them all, and I tend to believe him. He was a very up forward, honest individual. He hinted towards the fact that it's not under this current administration's purview, something that just doesn't really line up with their thought process. But he couldn't come out and just say it. And so we're hoping that the more outreach that we can get, the more people that we can get to kind of press down on them to where they can finally come up with a decision whether they're going to pursue it or not. But once they do pursue, or once they do say, okay, this is not for this current administration, the fight's not over. because now we've got to change what was amended in that 2005 IIJA ruling. That's where we have to fix our problem. We've got to get it back to where it was, where common sense was utilized. If eminent domain is necessary, it's going to be for the absolute smallest possible footprint necessary to complete the project, instead of just an open-ended take this land and it's no longer under your portfolio. Basically, is what it comes out to.
Now, Martin Heinrich, our U.S. Senator, has been a vocal supporter of the SunZia line, which has had more than its share of opponents, and it's a similar power line with similar goals in mind. And I know that some of the Native American uh, groups have opposed that. I don't know enough about who's pushed back on that. I haven't heard anything about this from Senator Heinrich on his social media account. I presume that you've gotten absolutely nowhere with him in terms of pushing back on this thing. He's likely a full supporter of it, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the hard thing as well, is he's a ranking member on um, Senate, or on the Conservation Committee there in DC as well. So we've been met with a lot of pushback. Absolutely.
Yeah, and kind of as a quick aside, when Chris Wright came in with the Trump administration and immediately had a meeting with Heinrich and kind of gave him the clear signal that nothing would happen to the national labs, Sandia or Los Alamos, which of course are huge economic drivers for uh, New Mexico as a general rule. It kind of perplexed me because, if Trump is serious about cutting spending, uh, one of those national labs, especially given New Mexico's anti-Trump perspective and mindsets and the hostility our politicians at all levels, including the land commissioner, had towards Trump in the waning days of the campaign when he was trying to get that big event organized. I thought, New Mexico is going to be in for a world of hurt here from President Trump. But uh, I don't know. I mean, I like a lot of Chris Wright's approaches on the issues, but it seems like it's interesting to me that he's being so quiet on this, and perhaps that relationship with Heinrich is working to your detriment.
You bet. And I don't understand the Department of Energy's. It's been radio silent since December. I think I've actually got to have a conversation with them 3 times. That's it. None of them in a meeting type setting. If they want to actually get something done, maybe they should get off of their hands a little bit and come see us and have a conversation instead of just trying to shove this stuff down people's throats.
Yeah, and it's again, I'll reiterate, I don't know enough about the efforts to get power from places like New Mexico to the West Coast and the Phoenix and other areas. But none of that would have to happen if we relied on traditional energy sources. Doesn't have to be coal. It could be nuclear. It could be natural gas. It could be others. And those are much more reliable and much more ultimately affordable once you take out the battery power uh, than unreliable windmills, and those do a lot of harm to wildlife, including the birds, and of course all the materials that go into those windmills and their inconsistent power and uh, the all the batteries that need to be had, the lithium ion stuff, and the issues that those create. So it's not really an environmental win when all is said and done with these major transfer systems that you have to build them for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and that takes material and mining and energy and the whole thing. So
Okay.
Uh, but that's my little rant. So who is fighting this? If I am listening to this show and I'm concerned about this, I may be hearing about this for the first time. Where can I get more information, and where can I find the resources to write a letter or email to the appropriate individuals who are making these decisions?
You bet, absolutely. You can reach out to the New Mexico cattle growers. We have been on top of this, fighting like crazy for the last, like I said, since December. We have all of the information needed for writing letters. If you need sample type letters to kind of figure out how to put your thoughts and concerns into a productive form, we have those type samples as well. The biggest thing that can kill you, especially and not just on this project, but on everything. And people need to understand this. If there's a bunch of duplicate letters that go out to just sign on to and sign the same letter and send it in, all of those letters get thrown out. The algorithm that sorts letters through all federal agencies, if it's just a duplicate letter that you're sending in, you're not going to get it heard. So you got to write from your heart whenever it comes to issues, especially pertaining to this project. But yes, you can reach out that you need, from getting more information to how and when to send in your letters whenever it corresponds to this particular project. And there's certain things that you do have to put on it through the Federal Register. You got to put the Federal Register number on it. You have to put the project name, the full project name on it, which is the Southwestern Connector Corridor Grid. And the National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor. But we have all of that information if you just go on to NewMexicoCattleGrowers.org, and we can help you out.
Okay, I am looking through this. I saw there was a NM Agriculture. Yeah, it's NM Agriculture. Is if you Google New Mexico cattle growers, it takes you to a website that is nmagriculture.org. Is that as you understand it? I do see the Southwest connector there. If you scroll halfway down the page, but it says contact the office to learn more, and it gives 505-247-0584 phone number, and there's a map. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay, and that map is quite interesting. It's got these little tentacles down in southeast New Mexico, and then it kind of hugs the New Mexico, Texas, and then subsequently the Oklahoma border all the way up into far southeastern Colorado. So uh, it I'm sure that they are going somewhere with this power line, but boy, it looks like it goes kind of from nowhere to nowhere. If I'm if I'm looking at it, I'm sure it connects into the broader grid at some point.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like, though, when you look at it. It starts at nothing and it ends at nothing.
Okay, well, I'll give these folks a holler and see what we can do. Yeah, I agree. It's when you're doing these comments, you want to do things original, and it's better to have a spelling mistake or something that may not fit in exactly with the entire comment than to just cut and paste somebody else's information, because as you said, that's not going to fly. Well, anything else, Bronson Corn? I do appreciate your time here. Anything else you want to say about? Oh, well, let's no talk about the heat rule. I apologize. I knew I wanted to talk about something else. We've been working on the heat rule here at Rio Grande Foundation for a while, but that could be, yeah, that could be a problem out there working on a ranch, and you're not able to work in uh, you know relatively moderate temperature scenarios. That's not going to fly very far. Talk
Mm.
about that.
No, it's pretty sad that there's a large group of people that don't know exactly how their food is raised and where it comes from. Because if we were relegated to have to work in 90-degree weather all the time, there'd be a lot of hungry, dadgum people out there. because at some point, folks have to understand that um, if you kill the hand that feeds you, it's gonna hurt us all, and that's what they keep pushing towards agriculture. This heat rule, where if it's over and it's changed several different times from whenever it first come out to the relative heat of what they're saying that you have to take mandatory breaks, and we can't get anything done by working 45 minutes a day and or 45 minutes an hour and then stopping for 30 minutes and working another 45 minutes. That's not the way agriculture works. Whenever you get started, you have to proceed through, you have to finish what you're started. Or it causes large ramifications all the way through. And it's so hard to get caught up in the ranching industry and in the farming industry. And if they just keep pushing stuff that they have no idea what they're talking about, it's going to cause a lot of family farms and ranches to just say the heck with this. I'm going to go somewhere else. The lack of common sense whenever it comes to how agriculture operates is hilarious, to be honest with you. The amount of our legislators that are so far generations removed from agriculture, yet they're the ones that are putting these ridiculous laws towards agriculture when they don't know. They do not know what it takes. And instead of just asking the agriculture people, they're asking people like the Center of Biological Diversity. They're asking the Sierra Club. They're asking those people that they can more relate with what they need or what they would like to see done instead of talking to the people that actually do it for a living.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. Of course, you're working outside and in the elements, whether it's hot or cold or rainy or snowy or whatever it may be. And you know, even the idea that you're going to have someone sitting there tracking all of this, it exhibits an unrealistic or a lack of knowledge about just how work is done in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different contexts. And I don't know. I can imagine that you travel around your ranch quite often in those kinds of extreme conditions, and you're often alone. Now, obviously, that derives certain enforcement problems and questions, but uh, you could probably have like a little diary you carry and track it just for your own entertainment purposes. But it's totally unrealistic and pretty idiotic.
It is. It is. It's very sad, and that's you know ranching and is not a it's not for everybody. That's why they're in agriculture alone in the United States. We're now at less than 1.5% of the population in the United States that's involved in production agriculture, because it's not an easy way of life. And whenever you start cutting out more and more of those 1.5%, now we're having to figure out how to feed the rest of the dang country and a pretty good portion of the world with a very, very limited labor source. And this is going to do nothing but make that even harder on top of this.
All right. Well, I do appreciate your time, Bronson, and good luck. And I will do our very best to not only get some comments on behalf of the Rio Grande Foundation filed, but also, is there a deadline? Do you know of any deadlines? It doesn't seem to say anything, but
No.
want to make sure. All right. Yeah, this seems like it's kind of caught in the regulatory maw right now, and hopefully it stays that way.
Yes.
Uh, although it would be probably better if Trump outright killed it, and whoever the next president may be of either party kind of just forgets about this whole deal. But obviously, if you bring back, say AOC or some very progressive left winger, they, as the president, they would probably be inclined to restart this kind of thing, regardless of its actual environmental benefit. But it'll be easier if they put the knife in this thing. So, all right. Well, thanks for your time and all the information. And Thank you, listeners, for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.